The flames of Terra's unification had not yet been extinguished, but the Emperor's vision for humanity reached far beyond the cradle of mankind's birth. The stars awaited, and the first steps toward the Great Crusade began in the early 700s of the 30th millennium. It was during this time that the Emperor of Mankind turned his gaze to Terra's moon, Luna, and the secrets it harbored. The Selenar gene cults, isolated yet formidable, controlled genetic technologies vital to the expansion of the newly formed Space Marine legions, but they rejected the Emperor's overtures of diplomacy. Thus, war became inevitable. The conquest of Luna marked the first campaign in which the Space Marine legions fought beyond Terra's atmosphere. 3 legions, the 7th, 13th, and 16th, later to be known as the Imperial Fists, Ultramarines, and Luna Wolves, respectively, were chosen for this historic assault. Rocket engines roared as the Emperor's forces ascended from Terra, their launch lighting the skies of a world still fractured by the ongoing unification wars. The yet unnamed 16th Legion was selected to lead the charge, embodying the vanguard of the Emperor's growing army. In a daring and ruthless strike, the 16th Legion descended upon Luna with overwhelming force. While their brother legions drew the Selenar's defensive fire, the warriors of the 16th pierced the gene cult's fortifications. Within 6 solar hours of the campaign's first strike, Luna's defenses crumbled. The survivors of the Selenar, seeing their annihilation was inevitable, surrendered and bent the knee to the Emperor of Mankind. They transmitted their capitulation directly to Terra, begging the Emperor to call off his wolves. Thus, the 16th Legion earned its name, the Luna Wolves. Among the spoils of this brief but significant campaign was evidence of occult practices buried deep within the Selenar gene rights vaults. Though the cult's technologies were swiftly repurposed for the Imperium, their forbidden methodologies were sequestered in the Emperor's most secretive chambers, deep within the Imperial dungeon beneath the palace on Terra. This conquest not only marked the Imperium's first off-world victory, but also secured the resources needed to fuel the burgeoning Great Crusade. 9 years after Luna's pacification, the unification wars on Terra came to an end. The Emperor consolidated his control over the world, bringing centuries of conflict and bloodshed to a decisive close. With his banner raised high over the ruins of ancient empires, the Emperor declared Terra unified under his rule. It was here that the Emperor's dream of a galaxy-wide human dominion truly began to take shape. But the Emperor's victory was not only military. He now turned his efforts toward forging the ideological foundation of the Imperium. The imperial truth, a rationalist secular philosophy rejecting all forms of superstition, religion, and mysticism, was to be enforced across Terra. Yet even as the Emperor proclaimed the death of gods, otherworldly powers stirred in the shadows, watching and waiting. The Emperor's ambitions were vast, but to fulfill them, he required the technological and industrial might of Mars. The Red Planet, home to the ancient Mechanicum, was a world of fire and steel, its surface dotted with vast forged cities and crawling with towering titans. Yet Mars was not Terra's mirror. Its rulers followed the cult Mechanicus, a techno-religion devoted to the worship of the machine god, the Omnissiah. The Mechanicum's forges were indispensable, but war with Mars would have been a costly endeavor, threatening to stall the Emperor's Great Crusade before it could begin in earnest. Instead, the Emperor sought an alliance. His arrival on Mars was marked by a moment of profound significance. Many tech priests, upon seeing him, claimed to sense the presence of the Omnissiah himself. To them, the Emperor was no mere man, but the living embodiment of their god. This meeting culminated in the signing of the Treaty of Mars, also known as the Treaty of Olympus Mons. The terms were clear. In exchange for peace and autonomy, Mars would supply the Imperium with its mighty starships, weapons, and machinery of war. Mars would retain the right to practice its faith and maintain control over the forged worlds it had settled across the galaxy. However, the Mechanicum was bound by the Emperor's decree to never again develop forbidden technologies such as abominable intelligence, an echo of humanity's near annihilation during the Age of Strife. With this alliance, the Imperium gained not only Mars's immense industrial capacity, but also its armies of titans and the scientists and engineers of the cult Mechanicus. The twin-headed Aquila, symbol of the Imperium, was reshaped to represent this unity. One head for Terra and one for Mars. Together, they would form the twin pillars of humanity's future dominion over the stars. Even as the Emperor's plans for the Great Crusade accelerated, tragedy struck his most ambitious project. In the depths of Terra's gene labs, the Emperor had labored to create 20 beings of unparalleled power and intellect, the Primarchs. These superhuman children were to be generals, statesmen, and leaders of humanity, destined to command the newly formed Space Marine legions. They embodied the Emperor's vision of perfection, combining the height of genetic science with otherworldly knowledge. But the ruinous powers of chaos, ever watchful and envious of the Emperor's aspirations, intervened. As the Primarch project neared completion, the warp itself was roused. Through its malevolent influence, the 20 gestation pods containing the Primarchs were torn from Terra's labs and scattered across the galaxy. Each was cast onto a different world, far from the Emperor's grasp. The loss was catastrophic, but the Emperor remained undeterred. Though the Primarchs were gone, their genetic templates remained. From these, the Emperor had already crafted his Space Marine legions, each drawing strength and character from the gene seed of their absent Primarch. It was now the task of the Great Crusade not only to unify the galaxy, but also to recover these lost sons of the Emperor. As the 30th millennium unfolded, the Imperium was no longer a fledgling dream, but a reality taking its first steps into the void. Terra and Mars were united, the Space Marine legions were growing, and the Emperor's banner stretched far beyond the confines of Earth's skies. Yet even as the Imperium gained momentum, dark forces gathered in secret. The galaxy awaited conquest, but it would not yield easily. The seeds of greatness and of ruin were being sown. The Great Crusade began as an unparalleled endeavor, a galaxy-spanning quest to reunite the scattered remnants of humanity. With Terra unified and the Sol system falling under Imperial control, the Emperor launched his grand vision for a new golden age in 798 of the 30th millennium. Across the galaxy, the dream of the Imperium of Man began to take shape, carried on the banners of the Space Marine legions and the Mechanicum's mighty fleets. The Emperor had resolved that no world would remain beyond his reach. But even in these early years, not all resistance to Imperial rule had been extinguished. On Terra itself, deep in the Boedian lowlands, one of the last bastions of defiance refused to yield. The Boedians had long held out against the Unification Wars, their defiance tracing back to the Dark Age of strife. When Imperial army forces sought to bring them into compliance, the Boedians dug in and resisted. It was here that the newly formed 15th Legion, eager to prove themselves in battle, was unleashed. In a campaign lasting a mere 6 solar weeks, the warriors of the 15th Legion shattered the Boedian resistance, driving its armies to surrender in a stunning display of tactical brilliance. Their effectiveness did not go unnoticed by the Emperor. Shortly after the campaign's conclusion, the 15th Legion was bestowed with a name that would echo through the annals of history, the Thousand Sons. With their baptism in fire complete, the Thousand Sons joined their brother legions as part of the Great Crusade. Not all battles in this period were fought on planetary soil. Among the Azurite stations of Uranus, a string of crescent-shaped void citadels that had been pressed into service to support the Great Crusade, another conflict erupted. These stations were home to scavengers and void-dwelling artisans who had only recently sworn loyalty to the Emperor. Their newfound compliance was soon tested by the arrival of solar pirates, outlaws and mutants who sought to undermine the fledgling Imperium. The pirates entrenched themselves within the Azurite stations, waging a brutal war against both the newly compliant Azurites and the Imperial forces assigned to defend them. It was the 7th Legion, the Imperial Fists, who answered the desperate cries for aid. In their stoic and unrelenting fashion, 50 warriors of the Imperial Fists forced their way into the fortified stations. The fighting was bloody, but victory was within reach, until the pirates unleashed a devastating Psi Plague, an ancient bioweapon thought eradicated during the Unification Wars. The Psi Plague threatened to spread, corrupting not only the station but the entire Sol system if left unchecked. In an act of supreme sacrifice, the 50 Imperial Fists overloaded the reactors of the station, obliterating themselves and their enemies in a massive explosion. The Psi Plague and the horrors it carried were eradicated forever. When the Emperor learned of their heroism, he ordered the Bell of Lost Souls in the Imperial Palace tolled for the first time, a somber tribute to the warriors who had given their lives in defense of humanity. By 798, the Sol system was firmly in Imperial hands, and the Great Crusade expanded outward. Mechanicum explorator fleets, brimming with resources and war machines, departed to chart nearby sectors of the galaxy. At their vanguard were the Space Marine legions, whose banners now heralded conquest and unity. Among their early campaigns was the crushing of the Venori Resurgence, a psychic rebellion that had risen in defiance of the Emperor's rule. On the fringes of the Pan-Pacific enclaves, the Crimson Walkers of the Venori used their unrestrained psychic powers to dominate populations and raise grotesque armies of flesh-crafted golems. They faced a fitting end at the hands of the 8th Legion, the Night Lords. The Night Lords, masters of terror and psychological warfare, brought an end to the Venori with savage efficiency, ensuring that no trace of their rebellion remained. The Great Crusade's greatest triumphs, however, lay not only in conquest, but in the recovery of what had been lost. In 801, the first of the Emperor's missing Primarchs was rediscovered. On the mining world of Chthoniya, the Emperor reunited with Horus, his son and creation. Raised in the brutal underworld of Chthoniya's gang warfare, Horus had forged himself into a natural leader and fearsome warrior. When the Emperor found him, Horus swore fealty to his father and was entrusted with the command of the 16th Legion, the Luna Wolves. For many years, Horus stood as the Emperor's only recovered son and closest companion. Together, they forged the early triumphs of the Great Crusade, their bond shaping the future of the Imperium. Even as the Emperor's vision unfolded, whispers of old treacheries still lingered within the Sol system. On the asteroid prison colony of Cerberus, the Emperor faced a grim reminder of his earliest creations. The Warhounds, the 12th Legion, were dispatched to crush an insurrection among the prison's population of renegades and outlaws. Yet within the chaos of the uprising, the Emperor's forces uncovered a terrifying truth. Among the insurrectionists were renegade Thunder Warriors. These genetically engineered warriors, once the Emperor's chosen instruments in the Unification Wars, had been presumed wiped out after their purpose was fulfilled. Calling themselves the Datar, these Thunder Warriors now led the revolt, a bitter reminder of the Emperor's discarded tools. The Emperor's orders were clear. The Warhounds were to bring the colony back into compliance and erase all traces of the rebellion. The campaign lasted a mere 5 solar hours. Praetor Commander Caleb Hax of the 12th Legion transmitted the signal from Cerberus Primary. The colony had been retaken, the Emperor's will imposed, and the Datar annihilated. With their task complete, the Warhounds turned their gaze to the stars, their savage reputation growing as they marched forward to join the Great Crusade. The Great Crusade was still in its infancy, but its momentum was undeniable. The Emperor's armies marched further into the void, reclaiming ancient human worlds and uniting them under the banner of the Imperium. Yet, with every victory, the Imperium moved closer to its inevitable tests, trials that would shape its destiny for millennia to come. The Great Crusade continued to expand, pushing beyond the Sol system and into the stars. In the early 800s of the 30th millennium, the Imperium's forces encountered the Consus Drift, a vast belt of stellar debris woven together by tunnels made from the twisted metal of shipwrecks. This region had been inhabited for millennia by the Driftborn, humans stranded in the void during the Age of Strife, who had become masters of survival and brutal void warfare. The discovery of the Drift was an accident, as the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet, commanded by the Imperial Fists of the 7th Legion, was caught in a stellar anomaly called the Mirror Race and thrown into the region. The Driftborn clans fought fiercely, their intimate knowledge of the treacherous void proving to be a deadly advantage. However, their courage was no match for the transhuman strength and discipline of the Space Marines. The commander of the Imperial Fists offered the Driftborn a stark choice: submit to Imperial compliance or face extermination. The clans, seeing the futility of further resistance, surrendered. Yet the Driftborn would not escape unscathed. The Imperial Fists took the youngest and strongest male warriors from each clan, inducting those who survived the trials of initiation into the 356th Company of the 7th Legion. This new unit, born from the void, would go on to achieve legendary status as masters of out-hull void warfare and starship assaults. The Imperium's ambitions were not confined to human worlds. In 803, the Emperor turned his attention to Sedna, an artificial Xenos construct on the outer edge of the Sol system. Sedna had long served as a psychic anchor for an alien species bound together by unknown warp-based forces. 8 full Space Marine legions were deployed to destroy this nemesis world in a campaign that would become known as the Sedna Campaign. The combined might of the Space Marines obliterated Sedna's defenders, silencing the world and severing its psychic influence. After its fall, Sedna vanished from Imperial records, its location and nature shrouded in mystery. It was also during this time that the Thousand Sons of the 15th Legion began to uncover the full extent of their psychic gifts. Unlike many of their brother legions, the Thousand Sons embraced these abilities, seeking to emulate the Emperor's mastery of the warp. Their sorcerers wielded incredible power, bending entire populations to their will without the need for costly conquests. But the Legion's joy was short-lived. These psychic gifts came with a terrible price: the flesh change. This degenerative mutation began to affect large numbers of Thousand Sons, twisting their bodies into grotesque and mindless chaos-spawned abominations. The flesh change ravaged the Legion's numbers, and fear of its spread haunted the Thousand Sons as they struggled to maintain their strength amidst the horror. In the same year, the Imperium's explorers continued to chart the galaxy, identifying and claiming systems of strategic value. Among them was the Primarchs system, a trinary star system with vast mineral wealth and 37 major satellites. Discovered by rogue trader Hel D. Aniasi, its stable warp-synchronous location made it a vital waypoint for the Imperium's expansion into the Segmentum Obscurus. It quickly became a hub for supply lines and exploratory fleets, a beacon of Imperial progress in the dark expanse of the galaxy. The Great Crusade was not without its perils. In the western reaches of the Segmentum Solar, the Imperium encountered the Akhereth, also known as the Bone Drinkers. These predatory fungoid parasites infested void ships and raided human settlements, feeding on the marrow of living victims in a process of slow and agonizing death. The Luna Wolves and the 8th Legion, not yet formally known as the Night Lords, were dispatched to eradicate this menace. Their campaigns were brutal and uncompromising, culminating in a series of extermination pogroms that wiped the Akhereth from existence. Humanity's dominion over the void grew stronger, but the galaxy's horrors only deepened as the Crusade advanced. By 805, the Emperor himself had rejoined the front lines, marching alongside his Primarchs. One of their most celebrated battles took place at the fortified city of Raylis, where the Emperor and Horus fought side by side. The defenders of Raylis, unwilling to accept the Imperial truth, used secret tunnels to launch a daring counterattack. Hundreds of shock troops infiltrated behind the Imperial lines, swarming the command encampment. The Emperor and Horus, caught unprepared and without their armor, fought back-to-back against the onslaught. At the height of the battle, a plasma blast struck Horus, stunning him and leaving him vulnerable. The Emperor stood over his fallen son, refusing to retreat until reinforcements arrived to drive the attackers away. This battle cemented the bond between father and son, a relationship that would define the early years of the Great Crusade. A year later, the Crusade brought the Emperor and Horus to the Telon Reach, home to the Orc Empire of Goro. This vast scrap world, rivaling the later Orc stronghold of Ulanor, was a linchpin in the Greenskin Empire. The Emperor declared that Goro must be destroyed, and so he led the assault personally, with Horus at his side. Together, they teleported into the subterranean tunnel networks that riddled the planet's crust, facing overwhelming Orc resistance. At the height of the battle, the Emperor became separated from his forces and was confronted by an Orc warboss of unprecedented size, larger than any greenskin mankind had ever encountered. The monstrous creature seized the Emperor in its massive bionic claw, threatening to crush the life from him. But Horus, driven by fury and loyalty, carved his way through the press of battle to reach his father. With a single blow, he severed the warboss's arms, freeing the Emperor. Together, they fought deeper into the heart of Goro, sabotaging its self-sustaining warp-fold envelope. As they escaped, the scrap world collapsed in on itself, imploding under its own weight and bringing the Orc Empire to ruin. The early years of the Great Crusade were marked by triumph and tragedy, by the discovery of strange new worlds and the annihilation of old enemies. The Emperor's vision was becoming reality, but the path forward was fraught with danger, and the greatest challenges were still to come. The 8th standard year of the Great Crusade saw the discovery and compliance of the Osiris Cluster, a grouping of 11 star systems nestled in the second quadrant of the segmentum solar. These systems, many of which housed technologically advanced human civilizations, represented a rare opportunity for peaceful integration into the growing Imperium. The 13th Legion played a key role in this campaign, negotiating and enforcing compliance with remarkable efficiency and minimal bloodshed. It was hailed as a model for the ideals of the Great Crusade, unity through cooperation, not conquest. The following year, however, brought the Imperium into more hostile territory. In 807, the X-Legion engaged in one of their most famous early battles, remembered as the Compliance of Vo 234, or the Battle of Rust. This arid wasteland world, known for its oxide deserts and the corroded remnants of long-dead cities, had been reduced to a slave mining colony under the control of the Orc Crooked Claw Empire. The Orcs, led by their infamous warlord Wardog Kulo, spanned more than 60 inhabited star systems, making them a significant threat to the nascent Imperium. The X-Legion, under the command of Lord Commander Amadeus Duquesne, spearheaded the invasion of Rust as part of the Emperor's broader Principia Imperialis expeditionary fleet. The campaign showcased the X-Legion's ruthless and methodical style of war, inspired by the battlecraft of Old Albia. Employing a strategy known as the Hammer and the Storm, the X-Legion launched a relentless series of assaults, grinding down the Orc defenders over many solar days. By the end, the Orcs simply ran out of bodies and machines to throw into the fray. Despite the ferocity of the fighting, the X-Legion suffered fewer casualties than expected, losing less than a fifth of their number. The victory was celebrated as a triumph of Imperial strategy, with Rust reclaimed for humanity at minimal cost. Elsewhere, the Great Crusade clashed with far deadlier foes. The war in the Shedem Drifts brought the Imperium face-to-face with the Eldari of Craftworld Mor-Rioi, a powerful and cunning adversary. Under the overall command of Horus Lupercal, the Luna Wolves engaged the Eldari in a brutal campaign that spanned the region. To break the Eldari's defenses, Horus employed a controversial tactic. He used a demi-legio of the Titan Legio Ataris, the Firebrands, as bait. Unaware of the true plan, the Firebrands were encircled and suffered catastrophic losses, diverting the Eldari's attention long enough for the Luna Wolves to launch a surprise assault on the Craftworld itself. Though the campaign ended in victory, with the Eldari shattered and the Craftworld destroyed, the cost to the Firebrands was immense. Their near annihilation left a deep scar, and the Legio Ataris would never forgive Horus for his cold and calculated sacrifice. The Shedem Drifts campaign became a bitter reminder that even in victory, the Great Crusade often came at great cost. In 813, the Forge World Mazoa officially joined the Imperium. Mazoa, originally established as an outpost of the Lucian Mechanicum centuries earlier, had grown into an independent forge world dedicated to the production of heavy arms and armor. Its warworld status made it a critical addition to the Imperium's expanding industrial base. The forges of Mazoa, said to have been influenced by both the Emperor and Ferrus Manus in later years, became a vital source of weapons for the Imperium's legions. 6 years later, the Emperor's journey to recover his lost sons brought him to the frigid death world of Fenris, where he found the Primarch Leman Russ. Russ, raised among the savage tribes of Fenris, challenged the Emperor to 3 contests: eating, drinking, and fighting. Though Russ bested the Emperor in the first 2, he was humbled in the third, acknowledging the Emperor's superior strength. Following his defeat, Russ swore fealty to the Emperor and was granted command of the 6th Legion, soon to be known as the Space Wolves. Their ferocity and loyalty would become legendary, as would the bond between Russ and his father. In 824, the Great Crusade pressed further into the galaxy. Ferrus Manus, another of the Emperor's lost Primarchs, was discovered on the harsh, metallic world of Medusa. There, Ferrus had spent his youth battling machine monsters and unearthing the buried secrets of his techno-barbaric homeworld. Rising to command over Medusa's rival techno-clans, Ferrus Manus forged his people into a powerful war machine. When the Emperor arrived, the two clashed in a cataclysmic meeting that ended with Ferrus Manus swearing allegiance to his father. Taking command of the 10th Legion, Ferrus renamed them the Iron Hands, reflecting his unyielding nature and dedication to the perfection of machine and flesh. That same year, the Imperium made contact with the planet Leith, located in the Choronid Deeps region. Discovered by rogue trader Vasperly Elgin, Leith became an early staging ground for the Great Crusade's advance into this distant area of the galaxy. Later integrated into the Imperial fold, Leith contributed elite pioneer light infantry cohorts to the Imperialis Auxilia, proving its value as both a strategic hub and a source of exceptional warriors. The Great Crusade marched ever onward, uniting lost human civilizations, forging new alliances, and bringing entire systems into compliance. Yet, the galaxy remained fraught with dangers, and the journey ahead promised even greater trials for the Emperor, his sons, and the Imperium they sought to build. The Proximan Rebellion of the late 800s of the 30th millennium stands as one of the earliest recorded engagements of the yet unnamed Third Legion. The insurrection began during what was meant to be a ceremonial moment, Proxima's formal accession into the Imperium. Acting as the Emperor's honor guard, the warriors of the Third Legion stood proudly beside the custodian guard as the event unfolded. But beneath the pomp and grandeur of the ceremony, a deadly trap had been laid. Insurrectionists launched a surprise attack on the ceremonial plaza, unleashing devastating firepower, including a forbidden vortex weapon, which struck the Emperor himself. Wounded and cut off, the Emperor fought his way clear, but only through the sacrifice of the 16th cohort of the Third Legion and their custodian allies. Every last warrior of the cohort gave their lives, refusing to yield even an inch of ground to the traitors. Their unbreakable stand bought the Emperor precious time to recover and escape. In honor of their sacrifice, the Emperor personally presented the standard of the Palatine Aquila to the Third Legion. The Aquila, fiercely defended on that fateful day, became the Legion's sacred relic, a symbol of their loyalty and valor. The Emperor granted them the unique right to display the Aquila upon their armor, a privilege no other legion would share. But the rebellion itself was not left unpunished. The Emperor gave the Third Legion the task of ending the Proximan revolt with utter finality, authorizing Exterminatus to repay the blood debt owed to their fallen brothers. For the Third Legion, this moment marked both triumph and tragedy, one that would resonate throughout their history. But their trials were far from over. Within a solar year of the Proximan Rebellion, catastrophe struck the Third Legion. A series of disasters began with the mysterious loss of their gene seed stock, which had been sent to Luna for storage and further development. Accounts of what happened vary. Some claim the void ship carrying the gene seed was destroyed by a hijacked defense laser operated by remnants of the Selenite gene cults, while others suggest the ship simply lost control and crashed. Whatever the cause, the result was the same. The Third Legion's genetic future was dealt a severe blow. Worse still, a second calamity followed in quick succession. A fast-acting viral blight dubbed the Blight infected the gene seed vaults on Terra, spreading with terrifying speed. The Mechanicum's Magi biologists worked desperately to contain the outbreak, but the infection, suspected to be of Xeno's origin, defied all treatment. Many legions suffered losses during this crisis, but for the Third Legion, the cost was total. Their remaining gene seed reserves were completely destroyed. Only the intervention of the Emperor himself, who personally purged the taint, saved other legions from the same fate. For the Third Legion, however, the damage was irreversible. They were left teetering on the brink of extinction. Amidst this turmoil, reports began to surface of anomalous Space Marine activity. Units bearing no clear Legion markings were observed carrying out clandestine operations, often in war zones or areas of high strategic importance. These mysterious warriors, referred to in whispers as the Ghost Legion, seemed to operate under unassailable clearance codes, allowing them to move without question. Their targets ranged from high-profile assassinations to abductions and raids, both on Terra and beyond. The true nature and allegiance of the Ghost Legion remained unknown, their existence shrouded in secrecy and speculation. Despite the hardships faced by the Third Legion, hope emerged in 830. The Emperor arrived on the industrial mining world of Chemos, where he was reunited with his lost son, Fulgrim. Fulgrim, raised in a resource-starved and ravaged society, had rebuilt his homeworld, transforming it into a thriving hub of industry and order. Upon meeting the Emperor, Fulgrim immediately recognized him for who he truly was. Bending his knee, Fulgrim swore eternal loyalty and offered his sword in service. Pleased with his son's devotion, the Emperor entrusted Fulgrim with command of the Third Legion. Fulgrim's first address to his legion was so moving that it brought even the Emperor to great pride. Declaring that the Third Legion would strive for perfection in all things, Fulgrim's words led the Emperor to rename the Legion as the Emperor's Children. This renaming was a tremendous honor, one Fulgrim vowed to uphold with his life. With their Primarch finally returned, the Emperor's Children embarked on a new chapter, their path forever altered by Fulgrim's vision of excellence. Soon after, the Great Crusade turned its attention to the Praxel system. A formidable human civilization with immense wealth and resources, Praxel refused to bow to the imperial truth, fielding a war fleet that repelled the initial invasion force sent by the Imperium. Determined to claim the system for the Great Crusade, the Emperor's Children, supported by the Imperial Army and Mechanicum forces, launched a massive second offensive. However, their pride proved to be a stumbling block. Despite their best efforts, the campaign dragged on, and casualties mounted alarmingly. Too proud to request reinforcements, the Emperor's Children continued their struggle alone until the War Council of Terra intervened. A combined force of Blood Angels and Imperial Fists was dispatched to aid the beleaguered Legion. Though initially slighted by the perceived insult to their honor, the Lord Commander of the Emperor's Children set aside his misgivings and devised a new plan, coordinating with his cousin legions. With their combined strength, the second offensive against Praxel proved successful. The campaign was a bitter reminder that even the most elite legions could falter without unity. The Great Crusade, despite its victories, continued to test the strength and resolve of the Imperium's armies. The Emperor's vision pressed onward, but the challenges faced by his sons and their legions grew ever more complex, laying the foundation for triumphs and tragedies yet to come. The early years of the Great Crusade were filled with both glory and grim determination, as the Imperium pushed its reach further into the galaxy. On the periphery of the Dalanite Nebula, the Emperor's Children faced one such test during the Defense of Tranquility. This remote and seemingly worthless world held significance only because of the Tranquility Gate, a warp gate hanging in high orbit above the planet's pole. The gate was a vital strategic asset as it could drastically improve the Imperium's ability to navigate the warp and reach distant targets. A small force of just 500 warriors from the Emperor's Children was tasked with guarding the forward Imperial navigation relay built on Tranquility. Without warning, a Xenos fleet emerged from the warp gate, launching a ferocious ground assault. Although the Imperium's warships managed to repel the Xenos fleet in orbit, forcing their retreat back through the gate, the alien ground forces were left stranded. The Emperor's Children executed a methodical and vengeful counterattack, annihilating the invaders and securing Tranquility for the Imperium. The victory was another example of the Third Legion's precision and discipline, qualities that would continue to define them in the years to come. Around the same time, the Emperor's Children undertook another campaign of grim necessity, the extinction of the Katara. The Katara were an insular abhuman civilization in the Kennuit system, initially offering no resistance when the Imperium made contact. However, when asked to formally surrender, tensions erupted. A lone Kataran warship destroyed the Imperial light cruiser Locrian before withdrawing. In retaliation, acting Lieutenant Commander Abdamon of the Emperor's Children ordered an invasion of the largest Kataran city complex. The Katara, desperate to avoid further bloodshed, proposed a truce. The conflict would be decided by single combat between champions. Abdamon agreed, entering the field himself as the Imperium's champion. The duel was fierce and bloody, but the Imperial warrior ultimately struck the killing blow. Accepting their defeat with honor, the Kataran leaders ordered their people to embrace death. In a final act of defiance, they fell on their swords before Abdamon. Across their domains, The entire Kataran population followed suit, leaving their cities as vast, silent tombs. The Emperor's children, showing respect for the Katara's courage and self-sacrifice, departed the Kinuit system, leaving their world as a mortuary world to stand as a solemn monument to the fallen. The Great Crusade also uncovered betrayal within its own ranks. In the Ordoni cluster, the Imperium had once welcomed the warlord Vitala Geron Terentius into its fold. Terentius rose to prominence over 5 decades, conquering worlds in the Emperor's name and earning the favor of Malcador the Sigillite and even several Primarchs. Yet, at the height of his power, Terentius turned against the Imperium, launching a contra-crusade to conquer already compliant worlds for his own empire. The Imperium's response was swift and merciless. Horus, commanding the Luna Wolves, was sent to bring the renegade to justice. Heavy support from the Night Lords, Iron Hands, and Alpha Legion joined the Luna Wolves in the campaign. The Imperial forces shattered Terentius's armies, fragmenting his realm and sowing terror with tales of decimated worlds. At the climax of the campaign, Horus and 50 of his elite Justaran Terminators teleported onto the bridge of Terentius's flagship. There, Horus slew the traitor with his talon, ending the rebellion. The punishment for Terentius's betrayal was total. The Night Lords enacted brutal purges across his rebel empire, slaughtering its population. The Iron Hands, supported by elements of the Ordo Reductor, destroyed every structure on Terentius's Bastion worlds, reducing his holdings to dust. Even the air of his homeworld was laced with toxins to ensure nothing survived. Once the castigation was complete, Horus sent Terentius's gold-dipped skull to Terra with a grim warning, so perish all traitors. In 832, the Emperor traveled to the volcanic world of Nocturne, where he discovered the Primarch Vulcan. Raised by a blacksmith amidst the fiery hellscapes of his homeworld, Vulcan had become a hero to his people, known for his immense strength and skill in forging weapons. When the Emperor arrived, he challenged Vulcan to a contest to slay one of the largest salamanders, the immense drake-like creatures native to Nocturne. During the hunt, Vulcan's life was endangered, and though the Emperor had already secured a larger prize, he chose to sacrifice his trophy to save his Gene son's life. This act of selflessness humbled Vulcan, who bent the knee to the Emperor and pledged his loyalty. Vulcan joined the Great Crusade, and after serving alongside the Emperor, he took command of the 18th Legion, the Salamanders. With Vulcan at their helm, the Salamanders would grow into a legion defined by their endurance, craftsmanship, and unwavering commitment to protecting humanity. The early phases of the Great Crusade demonstrated the heights of imperial ambition, the depths of betrayal, and the relentless march of unity under the Emperor's vision. Yet, as the Imperium continued to expand, it also revealed the complexities of war, loyalty, and the cost of unification. The galaxy's countless challenges would test not only the Emperor's armies, but the resolve of the Master of Mankind himself. In 833, the Osiris cluster, once a model of peaceful compliance, erupted into rebellion. For reasons unknown, the 11 star systems declared independence from the Imperium, triggering a swift response from the 13th Legion. The 12th Expeditionary Fleet was dispatched, led by Legion Commander Gren Vasotho, with orders to suppress the rebellion. However, the situation quickly spiraled out of control. A failure of intelligence left the 13th Legion unprepared for the emergence of the Osiran Cybrids, a vile Xenos species capable of psychically enslaving the human population. Entire worlds were turned against the Space Marines as the Cybrids drove the Osirans into suicidal assaults on the Legion's forces. The campaign became a battle of attrition, with the Cybrids using their enslaved armies to wear down the 13th Legion. After suffering catastrophic losses, Vasotho ordered a retreat, but during the withdrawal, the fleet's flagship, Sethon's Thunder, was lost with all hands, including Vasotho himself. Command fell to First Captain Marius Gage, who ordered a blockade of the Osiris cluster while reinforcements were mustered. A year later, the 12th Expeditionary Fleet returned, bolstered by elements of the Solar Armada, the 18th Legion, and anti-psyker cadres from Terra. To their astonishment, they found the cluster in ruins. Entire worlds were littered with the unburied dead, and others had descended into chaos and civil strife. The Osiris Rebellion ended in devastation, with the Cybrids' fate remaining a mystery. In 835, the Great Crusade reached the Inuit cluster, a frigid region of ice worlds ruled by the Primarch Rogel Dorn. Dorn, the seventh Primarch to be rediscovered, greeted the Emperor aboard the Phalanx, a colossal starship from the Age of Technology that he had restored to full operation. Recognizing Dorn's skill and unwavering resolve, the Emperor welcomed his son into the fold and entrusted him with command of the 7th Legion. Dorn transformed his legion into the Imperial Fists, a force renowned for their mastery of fortification and siege warfare. The Phalanx became their mobile fortress monastery, a testament to Dorn's pragmatic and disciplined leadership. 2 years later, in 837, the Emperor reunited with another of his sons, Robut Guilliman. Born on the prosperous world of Macragge, Guilliman was raised by a noble consul and proved to be a prodigy in leadership and strategy. By the time the Emperor arrived, delayed by warp storms, Guilliman had already forged the realm of Ultramar, a thriving stellar empire encompassing the 500 worlds. The Emperor was deeply impressed by Guilliman's organizational genius and his ability to inspire loyalty. Command of the 13th Legion was passed to Guilliman, who reshaped them into the Ultramarines. Under his leadership, the Legion would become the largest and most disciplined of all the Space Marine legions, embodying Guilliman's vision of unity and order. In 840, the Emperor traveled to the remote world of Prospero, where he detected a strong warp presence. There he found Magnus the Red, his most psychically gifted son. Magnus, towering and brilliant, embraced the Emperor as his father and eagerly accepted command of the 15th Legion, the Thousand Sons. In the years that followed, Magnus and the Emperor worked closely together, with Magnus learning the intricacies of the warp and refining his psychic powers under the Emperor's tutelage. The same year, the Great Crusade turned to the war-torn Forge world of Enkaladian. The 4th Legion, the Iron Warriors, spearheaded the campaign to liberate the planet from decades of conflict. Their methodical approach, combining rational strategy with a relentless will to endure, eventually led to victory. However, the year-long campaign came at a heavy cost, with the 8th Expeditionary Fleet suffering near total losses among its frontline forces. Many questioned whether the victory had been worth the price paid, a critique that would haunt the Iron Warriors throughout their history. In 843, the Imperium encountered the sovereign forge domain of Xana. A damaged vessel belonging to rogue trader Casalida Dianiasi had been thrown off course after a skirmish with Fra'al corsairs. At the edge of the intergalactic void, it was intercepted by 3 enormous automata warships. To the crew's surprise, these vessels offered aid instead of hostility, bearing a message of greeting from the Forge Lords of Xana II and a proposal for diplomatic relations with the Imperium. The sovereign forge domain would become a valuable ally, albeit one with its own enigmatic motives and technologies. That same year, the Emperor made contact with the 9th rediscovered Primarch, Sanguinius. Born on the irradiated moon of Baal, Sanguinius was marked by his angelic wings and psychic foresight. He ruled over the pious and radiation-scarred tribes of Baal, protecting them from the horrors of their world. When the Emperor arrived, Sanguinius had already foreseen his coming. He pledged his loyalty in exchange for the protection of his people. The Emperor granted him command of the 9th Legion, which Sanguinius remade in his own image, renaming them the Blood Angels. Under his guidance, the Legion became a force of grace and ferocity, feared by their enemies and beloved by their allies. In 846, the Great Crusade encountered the death world of Caliban. The Emperor discovered Lionel Johnson, a Primarch who had risen to lead the knightly orders of his world against the warp-spawned beasts that plagued it. When the Emperor arrived, Johnson quickly recognized him and swore fealty. Command of the 1st Legion was given to Johnson, who renamed them the Dark Angels, inspired by the allegorical figures of Calibanite myth. During the Emperor's time on Caliban, an assassination attempt was thwarted by Zahariel el-Zurias, a young librarian of the Dark Angels who would go on to gain prominence within the Legion. As the Great Crusade marched forward, the rediscovery of the Primarchs continued to strengthen the Imperium's forces. Each reunion brought new strengths, new legacies, and new hope for the Emperor's vision of unity. But with each triumph, the Imperium also uncovered greater dangers, both within and beyond its borders, as the galaxy's secrets continued to unravel. In 848, the Imperium turned its attention to the human-settled world of Sarash. Initially discovered by the White Scars, the world had seemed eager to join the Imperium, with its leaders expressing enthusiasm for the imperial truth. However, after more than a standard year under imperial rule, Sarash's planetary leadership had failed to meet any of the benchmarks of compliance. Governor Harlad I, appointed by the Imperium, was met with excuses that Sarash's vast planetary bureaucracy made progress slow and difficult. To accelerate the process, the Dark Angels were tasked with overseeing Sarash's compliance. However, during this time, an assassination attempt was made on the Primarch Lion L. Johnson by the Sarosi leader known as the Lord High Exactor. The plot involved smuggling a nucleonic device aboard L. Johnson's flagship, the Invincible Reason. Although the assassination failed, the incident revealed a horrifying truth. Sarash's bureaucratic system was a cover for a cult that communed with Xenos entities from an alternate dimension, likely the Warp. In response, the Dark Angels, supported by forces from the 4th Expeditionary Fleet, launched a ruthless campaign against the cult. In a short but brutal conflict, they annihilated all traces of the Sarosi cult and forced the planet into full compliance. Sarash, once a bastion of treachery, became a warning of the hidden dangers lurking even within seemingly willing subjects of the Emperor. The following year, in 849, the Emperor discovered Perturabo on the mountainous world of Olympia. Perturabo, a Primarch marked by his unrelenting intellect and grim pragmatism, had risen to prominence as both a scientific and military genius. When the Emperor reunited with him, Perturabo was granted command of the 4th Legion, which had been battered by costly campaigns during the early Great Crusade. Perturabo, ever a perfectionist, judged his legion harshly for their perceived failures and ordered their decimation, a punishment in which 1 out of every 10 Space Marines was executed by their own brothers. The remaining warriors, their hands stained with the blood of their kin, were forged into a force of unparalleled discipline and ruthlessness. Soon after assuming command, Perturabo led his legion on their first campaign under his leadership, the eradication of the Black Judges. These heretical, self-proclaimed arbiters of human purity ruled from the barren, ravine-scarred moon known as the Rock of Judgment. Once human, the Black Judges had degenerated into twisted and withered beings, enforcing their cruel laws across their domain. Driven by a desperate need to prove themselves to their new master, the 4th Legion unleashed their pent-up wrath on the Black Judges. Perturabo orchestrated the campaign with brutal efficiency, crushing the enemy without mercy. Every valuable resource, weapon, and piece of technology was stripped from the judges' holdings and delivered to Olympia or handed to the Mechanicum in exchange for their aid. The Rock of Judgment itself was dismantled, and its orbital shipyards were rebuilt around Olympia to serve the Iron Warriors, crafting a new generation of warships under Perturabo's command. In the years that followed, the Iron Warriors participated in some of the Great Crusade's most grueling campaigns. One such action was the pacification of Shravan, a joint compliance operation in the mid-850s that saw 4 Space Marine legions working together to eradicate the xenospecies known as the Badoon. The Iron Warriors won acclaim during the final assault, storming the last refuge of the Badoon and holding the line while their brother legions carried the battle beyond. During the victory feast that followed, Horus proclaimed Perturabo to be the greatest master of siege warfare in the Great Crusade. However, the celebration sowed seeds of discord. Fulgrim, ever the provocateur, jokingly asked Rogel Dorn whether he believed the defenses of the Imperial Palace, which Dorn had designed, could withstand the might of Perturabo and the Iron Warriors. Dorn, confident in his own abilities, replied that the palace's defenses could not be breached if properly planned. Perturabo, already bitter and insecure, interpreted Dorn's comment as an insult to his skill. Furious, he launched into a tirade of accusations against his brother. This incident permanently soured the relationship between the two Primarchs, and their legions rarely fought alongside one another for the remainder of the Great Crusade. The rise of Perturabo and the Iron Warriors reflected the dual nature of the Great Crusade, a time of unparalleled achievement, but also of growing tensions and rivalries among the Emperor's sons. While the galaxy continued to fall under the banner of the Imperium, the seeds of discord were already beginning to take root. In 854, the Great Crusade reached the toxic death world of Barbarus, where the Emperor discovered Mortarion, one of his lost Primarchs. Mortarion had been raised amidst the poisonous mists of Barbarus by the xeno-sorcerer known as Nikar, who ruled the world with an iron grip from his high citadel. Despite the oppressive rule of the Xenos' overlords, Mortarion rebelled, leading an army of Barbarus's oppressed humans in a brutal campaign to overthrow Nikar and his kin. However, while Mortarion and his forces had managed to overthrow many of the Xenos' tyrants, the highest and most fortified citadel of Nikare remained beyond their reach, sitting in the unbreathable upper mists of the planet. When the Emperor arrived on Barbarus with his Principia Imperialis fleet, he offered Mortarion his aid. But Mortarion, proud and defiant, rejected the Emperor's help, claiming that neither he nor his Death Guard required assistance to finish their quest for justice. The Emperor then challenged Mortarion. If he could defeat Nikare alone, the Emperor would leave Barbarus to its fate. But if Mortarion failed, he would join the Imperium and swear eternal fealty. Mortarion accepted the challenge and climbed the toxic heights to confront his foster father. Nikare's powers and the poisonous air overwhelmed Mortarion, but before his life could be taken, the Emperor intervened, striking down Nikare and saving his son. Bound by his oath, Mortarion bent the knee to the Emperor, though he harbored resentment for being denied his vengeance. Only after Mortarion's submission did the Emperor reveal their connection, naming himself Mortarion's true father and granting him command of the 14th Legion. Known as the Dusk Raiders at the time, Mortarion remade them in his own image, renaming them the Death Guard. Mortarion's warriors became synonymous with resilience and grim determination, unyielding even in the harshest of conditions. Yet Mortarion's bitterness over the events on Barbarus never faded, feeding a simmering resentment toward the Emperor that would plague him for years. Mortarion's first major campaign with the Death Guard came soon after, during the conquest of Galaspar, a hive world in the Segmentum Pacificus that had resisted Imperial compliance. The Death Guard's approach to war was brutal and methodical, and the aftermath of their conquest shocked even the supporting Imperial fleets. Billions of the planet's inhabitants were slaughtered, leaving the survivors terrified and eager to embrace the Emperor's rule. Galaspar's rapid fall sent a message to nearby systems, which capitulated to compliance without resistance, fearing the wrath of the Death Guard. Mortarion's methods were undeniably effective, but often left a trail of destruction that drew concern from others within the Imperium. One of Mortarion's most infamous campaigns occurred on the world of Kajor. The Death Guard encountered a savage warrior race of humans who had regressed into barbarism. Armed only with crude weapons like blades and flintlock carbines, the Kajori somehow held the Death Guard at bay for nearly 6 solar months. Mortarion later revealed that the Kajori possessed psychic abilities and fought alongside mysterious unseen allies. This campaign left a lasting impression on Mortarion, reinforcing his deep hatred of sorcery and the use of psychic powers. He would later cite the horrors of the Kajor campaign during the Council of Nicaea as evidence of the dangers of witchcraft and his belief in its complete eradication. Around the same time, the Imperium faced one of its largest orc threats yet, an immense orc war fleet led by Overdog Mashog. This force required a joint compliance campaign by the Space Wolves, White Scars, and Iron Warriors. Leman Russ and Jagatai Khan earned great renown for their ferocity in routing Mashog's forces, while Perturabo of the Iron Warriors, though crucial to the campaign's success, received little recognition. His calculated strategies had ensured the bypassing of Mashog's low-orbit defenses, but the credit for victory went to Russ and Khan. To Perturabo, this perceived slight added to his growing resentment toward the Emperor and his brothers, fueling the bitterness that would fester for years. The mid-800s of the 30th millennium also saw the compliance of the Iraqi Spiral, another campaign that further strained Perturabo's patience. The Iraqites, skilled fortress builders, had dug their strongholds into natural barriers and narrow passes, forcing the Imperium into a grueling war of attrition. The Iron Warriors, tasked with the brutal siege warfare necessary to overcome these defenses, had suffered devastating losses. The The campaign dragged on for years, and while victory was eventually achieved, the toll on the Fourth Legion was immense. When the conflict ended, great works of art and poetry celebrated the courage and heroism of the other legions involved, such as the White Scars and the Imperial Fists. The Iron Warriors, however, were largely ignored. In one notable painting, the Iron Warriors were reduced to the background, depicted as an apothecary harvesting the gene seed of a dying brother while the flag of the Imperial Fists flew over a captured fortress. Perturabo, infuriated by this perceived insult, sought out the artist and purchased the piece, only to burn it in front of the horrified artisan. "If my sons are not to be honored," he declared, "then they will not be a part of a record that glorifies another." Rogel Dorn later offered to commission a revised version of the work, but the artist wisely refused. In the mid-800s of the 30th millennium, the Imperium faced a strange and costly conflict known as the Two Wars of Arrhenius. The Arrhenius continuity, a series of interconnected worlds near the Sol system, had maintained their unity through the use of ancient warp gates of unknown origin. The continuity was ruled by a technobility caste from Arrhenius Prime, the central hub of the warp gate network. When an Imperial squadron accidentally jumped through one of the gates, they were boarded and overrun by cybernetically grafted warriors. In response, the Emperor sent an envoy fleet to demand fealty from the continuity. The technobility refused, arrogantly inviting the Emperor to join their empire as a tributary instead. For this insult, the Imperial Fists were tasked with bringing the continuity to compliance. Commander Hashin Yonad of the Imperial Fists' 39th Household launched a devastating assault that systematically dismantled the continuity's network. Within 2 solar months, their empire was reduced to a single stronghold, Arrhenius Prime. Victory was within the Imperium's grasp when an unknown menace emerged from one of the warp gates. The new threat devastated 6 star systems of the continuity, creating widespread destruction. Overwhelmed and with few options, Yonad made the difficult decision to destroy the warp gates, cutting off the menace but costing the lives of thousands of Imperial Fists and billions of humans. Arrhenius Prime survived, but as a ruined world. The Imperium renamed the scorched planet Necromunda, a stark reminder of the devastation wrought during the campaign. Around the same time, the Warhounds Legion undertook the compliance of the Nova Shendak system. This campaign saw the 12th Legion face a strange and intelligent xenospecies that had enslaved 3-star systems. The creatures, known for embedding themselves with metallic filaments to generate devastating bioelectric attacks, were driven back by the Warhounds and their allies in the Imperial Army and the Iron Warriors Legion. When the campaign reached the Xenos' homeworld of Nova Shendak, the Warhounds made an unexpected discovery: a population of humans living alongside their oppressors. With the Emperor personally leading his Warhounds into battle, the Xenos emerged from their subterranean nests for a final stand. Though the casualties were immense, the 12th Legion triumphed, exterminating the Xenos and liberating the enslaved humans. The people of Nova Shendak, grateful for their freedom, became devoted supporters of the Imperium. In 857, the Emperor rediscovered another of his lost sons, Lorgar Aurelian, on the theocratic world of Colchis. Lorgar had risen to power as the Archpriest of the Covenant, a religion that worshipped a savior deity described in terms uncannily similar to the Emperor. When the Great Crusade reached Colchis, Lorgar welcomed the Emperor with great ceremony, proclaiming him as the long-prophesied god of Colchisian faith. Despite the Emperor's insistence that he was no god and that worship violated the imperial truth, Lorgar continued to spread his religious zeal across the galaxy. Taking command of the 17th Legion, which he renamed the Wordbearers, Lorgar began reshaping the Legion in his image. His odd devotion to faith, however, set him apart from his brothers, many of whom viewed him as one of the weaker Primarchs. The newly reunited Wordbearers soon found themselves tasked with the purging of Arakiana, a compliance mission against the cult of the Iconoclast. This dark religion, based on the worship of a one true god, eerily similar to the Emperor, was eradicated in a bloody campaign. Despite the destruction of the cult, its teachings influenced Lorgar deeply, and elements of their tenets were incorporated into an early version of the Book of Lorgar, a foundational text for his legion. In 865, the Imperium launched a major compliance campaign in the Renomar system against the Orc war fleet of the Over-Tyrant of Grell. The system was already under siege by the Death Guard and Space Wolves when Rogel Dorn and the Imperial Fists arrived to reinforce the effort. Dorn, alongside Captain Archimus and 10,000 Imperial Fists, constructed heavy bulwarks on the surface of Renomar. The Orcs, as expected, threw themselves against these defenses in wave after wave of futile assaults. With the enemy drawn into this trap, the Space Marines counterattacked and annihilated the Greenskin forces, securing the system for the Imperium. The same year, the Emperor reunited with Jagatai Khan on the feral world of Chogoris. The Great Khan had conquered his world with a nomadic army of steppe horsemen, uniting the planet under his rule. When the Emperor arrived with the Great Crusade's Principia Imperialis expeditionary fleet, Khan faced a choice: submission or annihilation. Choosing loyalty, Jagatai pledged his sword to the Imperium and took command of the 5th Legion, which he named the White Scars. Under his leadership, the White Scars became masters of lightning-fast warfare, favoring hit-and-run tactics over prolonged engagements. In 866, the Great Crusade reached the Grail Library on the world of Riobia. Guarded by self-proclaimed warlocks, the library was filled with proscribed works of great psychic and arcane power. Refusing to surrender its secrets to the Imperium, the warlocks defied the imperial truth. The 19th Legion, tasked with the compliance of the system, moved to destroy the psychic threat. However, before they could act, a passing fleet of the Thousand Sons Legion had already intervened and dealt with the warlocks. The Grail Library was destroyed, but its secrets, both dangerous and invaluable, were left to Magnus the Red and his legion. The mid-800s of the 30th millennium were a time of dramatic expansion and costly struggles for the Imperium. Each campaign brought new victories and discoveries, but also deeper challenges as the galaxy's complexity and dangers revealed themselves. In 869, the compliance of the night world of Molech marked one of the most significant and mysterious events of the Great Crusade. Molech, a world steeped in ancient history and secrets, was brought into the Imperium's fold through a massive joint compliance campaign involving multiple Space Marine legions. Following their victory, the Emperor named Cyprian Divine of House Divine as the world's planetary governor. However, it was what lay hidden beneath Molech's surface that made this compliance particularly important. In the presence of several of his Primarch sons, the Emperor led a small group to a warp gate located on Molech. This ancient portal, a relic of humanity's golden age of technology, served as a direct gateway to the realm of chaos. The Emperor passed through the portal, entering the immaterial dimension of the warp to parley with the ruinous powers themselves. When he returned, the Emperor appeared visibly aged but vastly more powerful. To preserve the secret of Molech and its warp gate, he psychically suppressed the memories of his sons who had witnessed the event. He then established a massive garrison force to guard the world, leaving nearly 100 regiments of Imperialis Auxilia, 3 cohorts of the Legio Titanicus, and detachments from 2 Space Marine legions to ensure that Molech and its secrets remained under Imperial control. Between 839 and 890, the Imperium waged the Rangdan Xenocides, one of the most harrowing campaigns of the Great Crusade. The Dark Angels, supported by the Titans of the Legio Graphonicus, Legio Vulturum, and Legio Kidianos, fought against a Xenos menace that emerged from the edge of the Halo stars. Known as the Rangdan, these aliens posed an existential threat to the Imperium. Over the course of 3 brutal campaigns, culminating in the 3rd Rangdan Xenocide around 890, the Imperium lost tens of thousands of Space Marines, including 50,000 during the final conflict alone. Despite the high cost, the campaign prevented the destruction of the Northern Imperium. However, the Dark Angels were left severely depleted, paving the way for the Ultramarines to become the largest Space Marine Legion, with their numbers swelling to 166,000 by 899. In 876, the feudal world of Zavarich, located within the Cyclops cluster, was brought into compliance. This campaign was remarkable for its peaceful nature, as the world's leadership willingly joined the Imperium. By the time of the Horus Heresy, Zavarich had transitioned into a fully operational agri-world, becoming one of the few such planets in the region, critical to feeding Imperial forces. The late 800s saw other grim trials, such as the Majin Tor transgression. During the Second Rangdan Xenocide, a base mechanic bark carrying a dormant macro beast broke through the cordon of the galactic northeast and crashed into Majin. The Death Guard Legion, tasked with pursuing the bark, suffered heavy losses when the macro beast was reactivated by unknown means. Only the swift intervention of the 6th Legion, the Space Wolves, prevented a catastrophic disaster. In 891, the Mechanicum of Griffon IV, alongside their Legio Griffonicus Titans, faced an unknown Xenos threat known as the Hungering Gyre. This campaign, fought with tremendous sacrifice, ended in victory for the Imperium. In recognition of their efforts, the Emperor granted the Forge World of Griffon IV dominion over Paramar V and its valuable industrial facilities. That same year, the world of Lascal was discovered on the edge of the Grail Abyss by the Dark Angel's 7th Expeditionary Fleet under Lord Commander Suleiman Grimm. Previously a feral orc holding, Lascal had been cleansed by the Dark Angels and later became a forward outpost of the Great Crusade. Over the following decades, Lascal developed into a thriving Imperial colony, complete with an orbital fleet anchorage constructed by the Lucian Mechanicum. Another discovery of note in 891 was the dead world of Grail, found by rogue trader Corthona van der Velde. Named for its desolate and eerie nature, Grail became the namesake of the Grail Abyss, a region infamous for its hidden wealth and dangers. Over time, the Grail Abyss drew countless explorators and treasure hunters, many of whom met their end amid its treacherous void. In 896, the Emperor rediscovered Conrad Kurz, his 8th lost son, on the perpetually dark and sunless world of Nostromo. Known as the Night Haunter, Kurz had ruled Nostromo through sheer terror, enforcing brutal justice on the planet's corrupt population. Plagued by precognitive visions, Kurz foresaw the Emperor's arrival long before it occurred. When the Emperor descended alongside several of his Primarch sons, including Magnus the Red, Rogaldorn, and Fulgrim, Kurz experienced a vision so horrific that he attempted to claw out his own eyes. Despite his anguish, he pledged loyalty to the Emperor and was granted command of the 8th Legion. Kurz reshaped the 8th Legion into the Night Lords, a force specializing in the use of fear as a weapon. Under his leadership, the Night Lords carried out campaigns of terror designed to bring compliance through dread and submission. Kurz's methods, while effective, disturbed many of his brothers and marked him as one of the most unsettling figures among the Primarchs. In 899, the Xenocide of the Osiran Cybrids unfolded on the southwestern edge of the Great Crusade's frontier near the Eurytus Terminal. A subfleet of the 12th Legion under the command of Praetor Erad Krug was locked in fierce combat against the Orc Raiders of the so-called Glortian Empire, a brutal greenskin force from the uncharted abyss beyond Imperial space. As the Warhounds and Orcs clashed, a mysterious third party entered the fray, the Osiran Cybrids, a nightmarishly powerful Xenos species. Using advanced teleportation technology, the Cybrids boarded both Orc and Imperial vessels. Only the savage resilience of the Warhounds allowed them to survive the initial onslaught, though they lost dozens of void ships. The Cybrids destroyed hundreds of Orc vessels, spreading devastation across the battlefield. The Primarch of the Ultramarines, learning of the Cybrid attack, ordered the Warhounds to hold their position and, if possible, track the Cybrids back to their source. The Ultramarines dispatched a powerful retribution fleet to reinforce the Warhounds at the Eurytus Terminal. Together, the two legions launched a relentless counter-offensive. The Ultramarines, determined to avenge their near defeat during the Osiris Rebellion 6 decades earlier, systematically eradicated the Cybrids and their enslaved armies. Once the Cybrids were destroyed, their slave armies also collapsed, leaving the Ultramarines and Warhounds free to wipe out the remaining Glordian Orcs. Though the blood price was steep, the Imperium emerged victorious, ensuring that the Osiran Cybrids would never again threaten humanity. The same year, the Emperor arrived on the brutal world of Nuceria, where he found his lost son, the Primarch Angron Thalkir. Angron, known as the Lord of the Red Sands, had been sold into slavery as a young adolescent and subjected to horrific surgery that implanted the butcher's nails, barbaric cranial devices that heightened his aggression while dulling his higher functions. Forced to fight in the gladiatorial pits for the entertainment of Nuceria's rulers, Angron quickly rose to the top. On the eve of the largest gladiatorial event ever held, he led a successful slave revolt, freeing his fellow gladiators and retreating into the Dacia Mountains. Angron and his comrades prepared for a final stand against their oppressors. On the night before the battle, Angron dug his own grave, intending to die alongside his brothers and sisters in the name of freedom. However, the Emperor intervened, teleporting Angron aboard his flagship before the battle could take place. Enraged that his comrades were left to die, Angron swore never to forgive the Emperor for denying him the honor of dying with his kin. Taken to Terra, Angron was examined and then introduced to his genetic sons, the Warhounds of the 12th Legion. Upon assuming command, Angron remade the Legion in his own image, transforming them into the World Eaters. Their tactics became even more brutal and bloody, mirroring the fury of their Primarch. Around 900, a significant ideological shift began to take root on Terra with the establishment of the Temple of the Savior Emperor. A decorated imperial army officer taking the name Fatidicus, meaning prophet, secretly found the temple to worship the emperor as the god of humanity. This heretical movement violated the atheistic tenets of the imperial truth, yet it began to spread through the ranks of the imperial army and was bolstered by other cults, such as the Lectitio Divinitatis. Over time, this religious belief would expand across the newborn Imperium, sowing seeds of faith that would later shape humanity's view of the Emperor. The early 900s also saw the assault on Dulin, a campaign that reignited tensions between the Space Wolves and the Dark Angels. On the world of Dulin, the tyrant Durath had defied the Imperium, sacrificing thousands of envoys to his patron Daemon and insulting the Emperor himself. Both Leman Russ and Lion L. Johnson sought the honor of slaying the tyrant. When Durath insulted Russ directly, the Primarch of the Space Wolves demanded the right to lead the attack. However, Johnson ignored Russ's demand and instead launched a precise assault on the tyrant's fortress, killing Durath personally. After the battle, Russ confronted Johnson, and the two Primarchs fought a legendary duel that lasted an entire solar day and night. Russ eventually stopped fighting, seeing the humor in their quarrel, but Johnson, still furious, knocked Russ unconscious before departing to the Allosaur campaign. Russ swore vengeance, and to this day, whenever the Space Wolves and Dark Angels meet, their warriors reenact the duel between their Primarchs in a ritual combat designed to settle the grudge. The events of 899 and the early 900s of the 30th millennium showcase the Imperium's unrelenting drive to expand and overcome all obstacles. Yet they also revealed the fractures forming within the Emperor's great vision. Fractures born of unresolved grudges, ideological rebellion, and the irrepressible fury of humanity's darker nature. In the early 900s, the compliance of Tarsus saw the Ultramarines Legion bring the world of Tarsus into the Imperial fold. During the campaign, the Primarch of the Ultramarines was attacked by a mysterious assailant, but was saved by a native soldier of Tarsus. In an extraordinary display of humility, the Primarch knelt before the soldier and swore a warrior's oath that the Ultramarines would come to the aid of Tarsus should the need ever arise. In gratitude, the planet renamed itself Tarsus Ultra and honored the Ultramarines with the creation of the Tarsus Fresco, an enormous mosaic painted within a temple in the capital city of Erebus. This intricate artwork depicted the events of the Great Crusade, immortalizing the bond between the people of Tarsus and the legion that had saved them. The Night Lords, supported by the Titan legions Legio Volcanum I, Dark Fire, and Legio Volcanum II, carried out the infamous Shehugal Purge during the same period. This campaign of xenocide eradicated the Shehugal dominion in an act of unparalleled fury and brutality. The Purge such a deep mark on history that it became a legend of the Great Crusade, remembered even in the shadow of Horus's betrayal and the cataclysmic events that followed. The Luna Wolves were also active during this time, conducting the compliance of Tethonus. Fighting against an unidentified Xenos adversary, the campaign became a drawn-out siege of fortress states scattered across the planet's surface. To overcome these formidable defenses, Horus tasked the Forge world of Diamat with crafting enormous continental Ordinei siege engines. However, the war machines were completed far too late, over a standard year and a half after the compliance had already been achieved. These siege engines were placed in storage on Diamat, where they would remain until Horus's rebellion. Decades later, the War Master sent his raiding forces to claim the weapons for his campaign against the Emperor, cementing their role in the dark history of the Horus heresy. Elsewhere, the Luna Wolves faced another challenge on the world of Dahinta. Here, they fought against a race of self-aware machines known as the Overseers, led by an artificial general intelligence referred to as the Archdroid. These sentient machines violated one of the Emperor's most ancient edicts, the prohibition of artificial intelligence, which had nearly caused humanity's extinction during the Dark Age of technology. Despite heavy casualties, the Luna Wolves eradicated the Overseers, wiping them from existence. Only after the battle did the truth emerge. The Overseers had been created by a long-vanished offshoot of humanity, who had likely settled Dahinta during the Age of Technology. For centuries, these machines had maintained the crumbling cities of their extinct or departed masters, a tragic legacy swept away by the Imperium's zeal. Around this same time, the Alpha Legion executed several notable compliance actions. On the world designated 529, they brought an unknown adversary to heel. Another joint campaign, conducted alongside the gene-engineered Geno 760 Spartacid Regiment of the Imperial Army, brought the Farronus worlds into compliance. The Geno 760 played a critical role, their legendary discipline and fearlessness aiding the Alpha Legion in overcoming the system's defenders. The Alpha Legion also partnered with the Death Guard during the compliance of the Thorium Abominaplex. Though the details of this campaign remain sparse, records indicate it was a grueling operation against an unrecorded adversary. During the same period, the Imperium launched the xenocide of Kamenka Troika, targeting the barbaric orcs of the Kamenka Troika system. The Emperor personally issued the writs of war, commanding the Thousand Sons, the Legio Astorum Titan Legion, and a life host of Panpak Eugenians from the Imperial Army to eradicate the greenskin threat. The war was a grinding conflict fought across 3 satellite planets of Kamenka Ulazarna, a world claimed by the Mechanicum of Mars. After 2 standard years of relentless combat, the orcs were defeated, but the cost was steep. Tens of thousands lay dead, and the Thousand Sons suffered catastrophic losses, including 873 battle brothers of the Fifth Fellowship. The devastation forced Magnus the Red to reorganize his legion, reducing it from 10 fellowships to 9, mirroring the classical Pesajet of Prosperine antiquity. These campaigns exemplified the Imperium's tireless expansion during the Great Crusade, but they also showcased the staggering toll of war, both in lives lost and legacies altered forever. The price of progress was one the Imperium continued to pay in blood. In 902, the Iron Warriors undertook the brutal subjugation of Kaldorak's Aleph. The campaign was prosecuted by the 118th and 3rd Grand Battalions, which suffered devastating losses with nearly 65% of their forces wiped out. Despite the staggering cost, the Iron Warriors succeeded in utterly crushing the non-compliant forces of the Defiant World. Victory was achieved, but the high blood price was a grim testament to the Iron Warriors' unyielding commitment to the Emperor's cause. The same year saw the Emperor's children defending the ancient crystalline gates of tranquility in the Dalanite Nebula. These gates, claimed by the Imperium, became the focus of an intense battle when an unknown Xenos fleet emerged from them. The 3rd Legion ultimately overcame the Xenos attackers, driving them back through the gates and securing the vital region for the Great Crusade. Around this time, the Word-Bearers brought the world of Kur into Imperial compliance. Under their direction, the people of Kur constructed the city of Monarchia, called the Perfect City, as a tribute to the god Emperor. This event, occurring roughly a century before the Istvan III atrocity, would later play a significant role in the Word-Bearers' history. In the early 900s, the World Eaters unleashed their fury on the Golgotha sector, their first campaign following Angron's ascension as their Primarch. The campaign began with the Siege of Sarum, where the World Eaters fought to liberate the Forge World of Sarum from the Abhuman Empire, known as the Brotherhood of Ruin. This empire had besieged Sarum to claim the Mechanicum's technological secrets. Angron and his legions slaughtered the Brotherhood's forces with brutal efficiency, earning the loyalty of the Redjack tech priests. These Mechanicum allies pledged to supply the World Eaters with weapons and armor, forming a valuable partnership outside the Imperium's inner sphere. The World Eaters' campaign in the Golgotha sector continued for 11 years, during which they devastated 48 worlds and exterminated 7 Xenos species, including a branch of the man-eating Lacrimol. The liberation of Alpha Shalish was among their notable victories, where the 203rd Expeditionary Fleet cleansed the Lacrimol-infested world with merciless precision. The righteous fury of the World Eaters was recorded in detail by remembrancers and artist scribes accompanying the fleet. However, as the Great Crusade progressed, whispers of discontent began to surround Angron and his legion. These murmurs grew louder following the infamous Genna massacre, in which the World Eaters annihilated the entire population of Genna in a single night after the planet rebelled against its imperial commander. Angron's apothecarion had also begun widespread psychosurgery, implanting the butcher's nails into his space marines. The psychic screams of the dying during the Genna massacre were said to be audible to astropaths half a sector away, cementing Angron's reputation for savagery and madness. The Emperor, deeply concerned, dispatched Leman Russ and the Space Wolves to confront Angron. This event, later known as the Night of the Wolf, saw Russ attempt to reason with his blood-maddened brother and deliver the Emperor's decree to end the use of prohibited psychosurgery. Angron, however, refused to listen. Tensions escalated until a melee broke out between the two legions. Recognizing the catastrophic consequences of continued fighting, Russ ordered his legion to withdraw, choosing prudence over mutual annihilation. Following this confrontation, the World Eaters were exiled to the northern fringes of known space, tasked with waging war against Xenos far from the Imperium's core worlds. This exile was a pragmatic decision to harness their savagery without risking harm to civilian populations. In 921, the Luna Wolves fought the grueling Kelek genocide. On the world of Kelek, the 63rd Expeditionary Fleet encountered the hostile reptilian Kelekid, a species skilled in combat and fanatically opposed to the Imperium. The campaign proved to be a bloody, drawn-out affair, with the Luna Wolves forced to endure relentless attrition in order to achieve victory. The early 900s of the 30th millennium were marked by brutal campaigns, desperate defenses, and the growing shadow of division among the Emperor's sons. The flames of conquest continued to burn, but beneath them the seeds of future conflicts were quietly taking root.